Shut up. Stop it. I don't know why we're getting 3 blind mice. Thank you. Electric vehicles used to be very expensive, and then even when they eventually weren't, they were often flawed in not insignificant or easy to ignore ways. But this is the MG S5 EV. It's cheap, it's practical, it's fun, and it looks great. So where's the compromise? Perhaps this is the first electric vehicle that you don't have to make sacrifices to live with.
The MG S5 EV is an all-new arrival in the MG family, and although it replaces the MG ZS Electric, it has no predecessor. But it does have some family DNA in the form of a platform shared with the MG4. It goes up against other very attractively priced electric crossovers, including the BYD Atto 3, Chery Omoda 5, but it has the potential to eat into another much larger market. There are a lot of buyers out there who have been waiting to get into a small practical electric SUV, but the relatively high price until now has forced them into traditional petrol options, such as the Kia Seltos, Nissan Juke, or Mitsubishi ASX.
Now though, with a budget of about $40,000, you can have an all-new electric crossover, the MG S5 EV. And I reckon this car does an awful lot more than pretty much anything that's come before it. Now you can spend up to about $48,000, and that gets you the top of the range Essence with the largest 62 kilowatt hour battery. Or you can spend about $3 less and get the Excite with the same battery. But what we've got here is the top of the range Essence, but with a smaller 49 kilowatt hour battery, and it'll cost you about $43,000. Then there's the entry level version, which is the Excite with the same battery for about $40,000. Now in terms of options, really posh paint is the only thing for about $700, which this doesn't have. So the white is included in the price, and the only other option is to change that rather nice grey and black interior for a white one if you really want to risk biros and pockets and children with crayons, and that'll cost you no extra cash.
With a 10-year deal on all new models except the U9 Ute, MG offers the longest warranty you'll find. However, you'll need to get the vehicle serviced exclusively by an MG garage, or the warranty is reduced to 7 years.
The fact that this car shares a lot with the MG4 is a really good thing, because that is an excellent car as well. But thankfully, the one thing it doesn't share is the way it looks. Now, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I, for one, did not like the way the MG4 looks, and this thing I think looks absolutely fantastic. It's perhaps not quite as polarising, but I think this is going to appeal to a lot more people. There are plenty of electric vehicles to choose from with huge performance, massive batteries and all-wheel drive transmissions, but they will all come at a cost. What MG has done with this car is kept the cost down with a relatively small 49 kilowatt hour battery, and it sends energy to a single motor on the rear axle, 125 kilowatts and 250 newton meters. It has a 0 to 100 of 8.2 seconds, which is not particularly quick, and nor is it very efficient with 16.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, claims MG. The other feature I particularly like about this car is it has V2L, or vehicle to load, which means you can get a special adapter from MG, plug it into the charge socket, and you can run 240 volt devices and appliances off the car. So if you're camping, you could run creature comforts from home, or if you're on a work site, you could run power tools. And the other cool feature about that is you can set in the infotainment system the point at which the battery will be allowed to go down to using V2L. So if you're out camping, for example, and you don't want to use any more than 50% of the battery, you won't be stuck when you try and get home again. Clever thinking. Love V2L. When you're jumping into any car that starts at around $40,000, your expectations are probably limited somewhat, which is perhaps why I'm so pleasantly surprised jumping into the cabin of the MG S5. First impressions are very good. First of all, let's talk about the general materials here, because you don't expect a car like this to have leather interior for 40 grand, and so you're not sort of expecting the kind of quality or feel of one. It's a very nice upholstered interior, it's just not pretending to be leather, it's just vinyl, and there's nothing wrong with that. I particularly like that it's combined with a fabric on the centre parts, and if you look closely you can actually see MG embossed, which I quite like. Other materials that stand out for all the right reasons are this fake carbon fibre. Oh look, I mean, whatever you want to call it, I like it. It's a very convincing version if it's trying to be carbon fibre or not. And also, I love this synthetic suede material down here. So generally speaking, materials are of a very high grade. The steering wheel is leather, rear leather upholstered. It's heated, 11.5 degrees outside, so I'm very happy to have both heated front seats and steering wheel. Electric adjustment for the driver only. It's all keep fit on the passenger side. Other highlights include wireless device charging down here. If you open this center bin, you've got 2 USB-C charging points plus a 12 volt, and it's very deep. There's a lot of space in there as well for a car of this size. And if that's not enough storage, you've got more storage under here in this sort of little open area beneath the center console. One criticism I have, you have a little phone storage slot here, which presents the phone at a good angle for you to see the display if anything needs to pop up. You don't have to touch it to see that. But you can only use the wireless charging if it lies on that little pad there. It doesn't do both in the same place. The upside to that is you've got places to keep 2 phones. If you're the kind of person who has 2 phones, you know what they say about that? No, okay, I won't go into too much detail on that. I do get a sunroof in here. It's a standard panoramic sunroof, which covers both the rows. It's big and it's bright and it has a blind to cut out the sun on brighter days. No such problem today. And finally, the driving position is really, really nice as well. Ergonomically good for a taller driver like me, but it's got so much adjustment, I think it would probably be very nice for a shorter driver as well. The only thing I don't like is you don't have a tilt on the seat base. It'll only go up and down. I like the tilt to give it a little bit better under thigh support. Perhaps the only way it could be improved. I do also want to bring attention to, if you've watched any of my videos, you will know one of my pet hates is all the climate controls being buried in the touch screen, which this doesn't do. It gets its own climate control panel, and it's actually quite a beautiful thing. It's almost got a bit of a retro radio feel about it. You've got all the controls for climate in there, plus a really nice little handy, hit the little one on the right, it'll take you to the home screen in that center touchscreen. Speaking of touchscreens, I have a 12.8 inch center touchscreen here, which on bright days is, I'll be honest, a little bit dim. We've got it set to the light theme at the moment. There's a dark theme which I prefer, but you can barely see anything, particularly when you're in the navigation menu. Over here I have, this is a really nice section. Because this is a fully electric car, you've got quite a good in-depth bit of information when it comes to the battery. First of all, this basic stuff, it's a cold day today, so I can set a battery heater and also a low temperature reminder. So if you don't know, batteries don't really like extremes of temperature, particularly the cold. Today it was below 10 degrees when I set off, and there was no actual apparent degradation in the mileage or the range of that battery, but it will, even so, it can heat the battery when it's very, very cold. Clearly 10 degrees is not enough to bother it. And it'll also tell you when it thinks it is going to be a problem. This is the bit that I really like though. You can use this car with V2L, vehicle to load. You can set how low that battery will go, how much you discharge it using other things other than driving the car. So if you know you need at least 50% battery, for example, to get home after camping, it won't allow you to use any more than 50%. That's a really nice little touch for vehicles with V2L. We've got all of the applications, plenty of others you can add to your online services. There's lots of customization. You can have a different theme to this screen here. You can't really change the theme or the look of the driver instrument cluster, which is a bit disappointing because it's a bit boring. Worse than that, quite small, but as far as digital instrument clusters go, it looks bigger than it is, but it's actually not. The 2 bars either side for power and battery percentage and range, they're actually not a digital screen. They are just a kind of like calculator display. There are a number of driving modes, but you can't access them through a quick button on the steering wheel or on the center console. You have to do it through this touch screen. And as you know, one of my pet hates is options buried too deep in menus. If you want to change your driving mode from normal to sport, you want to do it pretty quickly, I would assume, but you can't. You have to go into this menu. The other thing I'm not mad on is there's 3 different levels of regenerative braking, which all work absolutely fine, including in adaptive mode. Not really sure how that works. But every time you jump in the car and turn it on, off and then on again, it will default back to low. Again, in a car for 40 grand, it's a really, really good 360-degree view camera with options to swap the view, so you can get specific angles of what you're looking at. And it also gives you a measurement of the distance you are away from obstacles and obstructions around the car. And its representation of where you are is very accurate and very true to the real world out there. So 360-degree camera that works really, really well in practice. Finally, we'll talk about it when we're out on the road. I've got this little little ominous, almost slightly suspicious looking triangle on top of the steering column. That, of course, is a driver monitoring camera, and we'll talk about how well that works, or perhaps not so, when we're out taking this thing for a drive.
The MG S5 scored an ANCAP 5-star rating with 90% score for adult occupant protection, but safety assist was 79%. It has 7 airbags, including a centre bag, but no knee bags.
In the second row of seating in the MG S5, you will not find a lot of luxury or tech touches. What can I show you? You've got USB-C charging, just 1 point down here, which means the kids are going to argue about who gets that. You get LED interior lighting, you get that nice sunroof when the blinds open, great view, lots of light coming into the cabin. Beyond that, there is not a lot. And unfortunately, there are not quite as nice materials back here. The same colour materials might be deceptive, but they feel a little bit more scratchy than the doors in the front row. Although the seat upholstery is just as nice with those nice fabric inserts. And you do get one of my favourite things, a folding centre armrest, which is at a great height with a couple of cup holders in there. But what you do get back here is heaps of space. Look how much space I've got. Knee room for a car of this class and size is up there with the very best. Tow room also, you typically don't get a lot of that in EVs because the battery occupies a lot of the floor space. And same again for under thigh support. For a long-legged tall person like me, there is tons of support. The seating position itself is lovely, nice relaxed position and comfortable. The view of the surroundings is excellent, and headroom, heaps of that as well. So you don't get a huge amount of luxury or tech back here, but in a vehicle like this, what I think really matters is space, and back here you get plenty of that. Access to the boot is via an electric tailgate, which is not unusual, but is less so in a vehicle of this price point. I also really like that you can open it to 3 different predetermined maximum settings, which is very good for taller operators like me, and likewise shorter operators. It gives access to a very big boot. That is 453 litres, which is big for a car in this segment, but it sounds even more impressive when you compare it to the MG4, which is a whole 100 litres smaller. It doesn't look particularly big at the moment, but that's because it's hiding its full capacity under this removable boot floor. That's when you get the full capacious boot. Very handy for loading items into the floor with the boot floor fitted. Makes it a little bit easy access, but to get the full size, you can take that out. Underneath that boot floor, you will not find a spare wheel of any description. Unfortunately, it is the can of sealant and the pump, which I hate. And then if there are satellites passing overhead, they can see where the tools are under that huge sign for some reason. There's LED lighting, there's bag hooks, little pouches either side. On average, very, very good marks for this boot. It might look very different to the MG4, but the MG S5 shares its platform and drivetrain, which means it should be just as good to drive as the MG4. Yes it is. Before we go out and hit the open road, I think it's probably important to focus on a couple of things this car does at low speed or when you're not going anywhere at all. That handshake between the car and the driver is something we overlook. We just hit the road and get on with it. But there's a few things that I like and also not so much like. For example, there's a lot of warning sounds, and it's not always clear what they mean. So when you jump in the vehicle, it's just on. That's the first thing we need to point out. There's no start-stop button. There is keyless entry, so you just need to hit the button on the door and it allows you in, and then it's just on. Do you like that or not? I'm indifferent. I don't mind it as long as you can be confident the thing has turned itself off when you leave the vehicle. And then there's the rotary gear selector. You just select drive by turning it to the right. In practice, it doesn't always work quite so well. It doesn't like going all the way reverse to drive sometimes, and it will just dump you into neutral, and you don't know whether you've selected the gear or not, or whether there's a problem with the car, or it's user error, often quite likely in this case. And then once you get moving, it makes a pleasant little electric sound when you're above a certain speed, just to notify other road users, vulnerable road users like pedestrian cyclists, that you are in the area and moving. I don't really like that gear selector. I would prefer something a little bit more tactile, a little bit more positive, just a little movement from one to the other. I don't know, it doesn't feel it's not positive enough for me. I prefer the clunk of a nice handle T-shaped thing rather than just a little flimsy dial. And this is not the only car. If you're watching my video I did a short while ago with the Tank 500 from GWM, that also has an electronic selector that does a similar thing. I'm going to go from reverse into drive, and it goes to neutral because it thinks I wasn't pressing the brake down hard enough, which I was. Anyway, the feel of this car is really nice at low speed. You've got a really excellent view of its surroundings. It's a manageable size. You sit in a nice position above the road, and its front arches or guards fall away really quickly, so you get a really nice sense of where everything is in the road. Really happy to position this in tight spots, parking, urban, suburban and metropolitan areas. It's a really nice car to live with at low speed. But enough of that, let's hit the road. The first thing you notice out on the road is once again that lovely manageable feel to the whole car. It sits really comfortably on the road. I've got a nice position to look at everything going on around me. It just instills a real nice confidence to just put it exactly where you want. In a nutshell, what this car does, it balances a good act for people who don't really care about driving and just want to get in and go, but it's also got a side to it for people who do really enjoy driving and want to have a bit of fun at the wheel. And to get that both personalities in one car is very difficult to do, and MG has nailed it again. The MG4 was the first car that really did that successfully, and this, of course, because it shares the platform, the MG4, shares a lot of those characteristics. Its ride quality is really nice. It's a little bit sudden and firm at times, but certainly not unforgivably. Its turn-in is really eager, light steering, but absolutely positive. Again, if you don't like driving and you just see it as a necessary evil, it's easy to drive and pilot around without even having to think too much about it. But for those who actually enjoy being at the wheel and sat in this seat, it's fun. It's got a real cheeky little personality that I wasn't expecting at all. There's a bit of wind noise coming from the exterior that you probably were expecting on a really blustery day like today. At higher speeds there is a bit of transmission noise, which I know is a bit of a strange thing to say for an electric vehicle, because aren't they all completely silent? No, they're not. EVs do make sounds, and there is quite a difference between the quietest and the very noisiest. This one you get a bit of a whine, and there might even be a bit of a gear sound in there. Generally speaking, there's not a lot coming from the actual road itself. The wind noise and the road noise are relatively absent. It's just a bit of a drivetrain sound. And let's talk about the elephant in the room here, the performance and the range. If you compare this vehicle with other electric vehicles, it's obviously going to look like an underperformer, because EVs, as we know, we've driven so many of them now, are inherently fast. And with high concentration battery cells, you can go 400, 500, 600 kilometers on a single charge, but those are big batteries. This has a relatively small battery at 49 kilowatt hours, but the important point to make with this battery is it's light. This vehicle weighs under 1700 kilos, which I know is not particularly lightweight, bantamweight for any normal combustion powered vehicle, but for an EV, that's about as light as it gets. It's really only things like BYD Dolphin that actually manages to shave a couple more kilos off that, but not a lot. And that translates to a really, really excellent character on the road. It's lively and it feels light and easy to maneuver. You don't feel like you're constantly battling physics to make this thing do what you want. It's unusual to find a lightweight EV, but this is exactly what this is, and I really enjoy those elements of it. The sacrifice is slightly less range. But let's talk about that, because MG actually talks about two figures. The WLTP is about 335 kilometers, but the NEDC is about 410, 415. In my experience, that's about what I'm getting in this car. I'm driving it relatively sedately. I'm not asking too much of it. I'm not loading it up. And I'm getting about 400 kilometers out of a single charge, even in cold weather like this, which is typically will shave a few kilometers off that indicated maximum range. So let's talk about that range. 335 kilometers is about the same distance from Melbourne to Echuca. It's a long way. So I think when people say that's not enough, what they mean is, oh, it's less than a Tesla Model S or less than a Tesla Model Y. Yes, it is, but do you really need that full range? Bear in mind that the average Australian commute is about 36 kilometers. This vehicle could do the entire weekly commute on a single charge pretty much. And now let's talk about the acceleration. 8.2 seconds is not going to set any tarmac on fire, Back to the Future style. But again, let's compare it apples with apples. Yes, it's slower than a lot of EVs, but let's compare it to other vehicles in the price range. We're talking Mitsubishi ASXs and Kia Seltoses. Those vehicles do 0 to 100 in about the 7 to 8, 9 second mark. So yes, they're not EVs, but what we need to really look at is the context of a $40,000 small soft roader crossover and what it can do compared with its actual rivals. This is dead on the money. Really, my only criticism of this car when it comes to the drive experience is, you guessed it, the old too many warnings and bings and bongs, and some of the time I have no idea what they mean. There's the 3 blind mice, as I keep calling it, when it just keeps singing an alert tone at me and I don't know what it means. And then there's the driver attention monitor, which sometimes think I've completely fallen asleep at the wheel and I'm actually wide awake and completely alert. There's a speed limit warning, which comes in at just 1 or 2 kilometers over the speed limit. And again, yes, you can switch it off, but it defaults on every time you cycle the ignition. So it's part of a whole pre-flight check you have to do every time you get in the car and start it up. So it would be easy to get in this car and immediately point the finger at its figures and just statistics on paper. And I think that is exactly the wrong thing to do with a vehicle like this. You have to ask yourself, what is it going to be doing day to day? Does it need to do 0 to 100 in 4 seconds? Absolutely not. It's a reasonably priced family to, outdoorsy focused couple SUV. Does it need to do Melbourne to Sydney on a single charge? Absolutely not. Virtually no one needs to do that in their electric vehicle. 300 to 400 kilometers on a single charge is heaps. And I would say in a vast majority of applications, completely adequate. This vehicle is a wonderful exercise in inadequacy, and I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean, when you look at what you're paying for the vehicle and what it does in return, it is very good value for money.
There might not be anything spectacular about the MG S5, but it's also fair to say there's nothing excessive or unnecessary about it either. And that keeps the cost down and the value razor sharp. And that's why I think this is not only the best car that MG makes, but also one of the very best EVs money can buy. That is the MG S5. It's 125 kilowatts and will do 350 kilometers on a single charge, but the range starts at about $40,000. Does that make it razor sharp value or not enough bang for your buck? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks for watching Car Sales.